Welcome, Andy, to North Star. This is our podcast where I chat to people that I used to work with and that I know randomly from different jobs. And I talk about your motivations, your career journey, and try to get some actionable advice for people who are listening. Okay, so our listeners are mostly engineers trying to figure out what to do in their careers. So last time I spoke to Adam, you know Adam as well,
Yeah.
Adam, who was a principal engineer at Amazon. So he was an IC, an individual contributor, and he had a different type of career journey. You are a manager. You were my manager at Amazon, and now you're an ED at Chase. So you've had an interesting journey as well, and I'm sure people will be interested in learning how you kind of navigated different decision points during your career.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
okay, awesome. So let's get started. Let's start from the beginning, like I always like to do. Uh, Tell us about your early career and why did you get into software engineering in the first place?
So I guess it comes down to my dad really. So my dad was a electrical engineer by trade, and then in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when I was a kid, he moved into the telecoms industry right before kind of mobile telephones took off big in the UK. He was working in that space and was very keen on computers, right? So we had, growing up, a number of different computers. We had an old BBCB, which is like a very basic computer in the bedroom, then followed that with a Macintosh Classic, and then a load of other kind of Apple related computers because Dad was into that kind of stuff. And we were relatively early adopters of the internet as a family because Dad had contacts in telecom space, so I was able to get us a modem really early
Mm-hmm.
on and stuff like that. So I remember being amazed at how I could make this computer kind of get access to these web pages really early on, and see what I could look at through Netscape Navigator and early versions of Yahoo. So I guess my dad, and then we had a neighbour who also worked in the telecoms space, but more on the software side. Between the two of them, they kind of got me into computers. I guess when I was about 16 in school, maybe slightly earlier, 15, 16, something like that, I got the chance to do some work experience with our neighbour in his company, and I built my very own IVR system, interactive voice
Okay,
telephone system, which was using Java. At the time, I didn't have any idea that it was Java. I was just doing these things I was told to do, clicking on the right buttons, doing things. But what kind of really got me was the fact that I could make changes and then press the play button on this IDE, and then the soft phone would come up, and I'd be able to go press that button, and then the woman's voice would tell me these are all of my options that I had, and then I could press the next one, and so on, and I could make changes and everything would change. And so it was great. I really enjoyed that. So at that point I was hooked, I guess. I made all of the decisions that I could to make sure that I could get into an engineering software computer science degree at university, the
mm-hmm.
right subjects that I needed to get into that. And then from then on I worked in a number of jobs as a software engineer straight out of uni. Some of them not great, some of them great, in the healthcare industry, and then the finance industry, and then back into healthcare, and then I ended up at Amazon. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I got into it and what I did.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I think that between Adam, you, and me, we have very similar stories of how we got into the field. Something to do with our dads, and something to do with getting into it at a very early age and making the right decisions to end up as an engineer.
Yeah.
Um, can you tell me what that first application was that you built? You used IVR4. What were your
So
options and what was the use case?
the company that, so they basically, this company, I can't remember the name of them. Oh, Lucent Technologies they're called. They're basically like, they did call center applications. So when you call up any number and it says press 4 for this department, press 5 for this if you want to talk. If none of the options make sense, hold and you'll speak to the operator, kind of thing.
Yep.
They did that, and they had an IDE that allowed you to kind of plug in and make a workflow right? That was essentially that IVR system. But you had to go in and make config changes behind the scenes. So you kind of go, right, okay, I need a 1 to 5 thing here, and 1 goes to there and 2 goes to there, and blah blah blah. But you then go in and you click on the routes between the different workflows, and you make some slight changes to Java code. So that's kind of what it is. And it was they put on this project for me. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but looking back now, I'm like, God, that must have taken them a while to come up with this project for this 15-year-old to come in and it be at the right level for me to do, and not pester them all the time about, oh, how do I do this? What do I do here? Blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of it, I came up with this running application that met the brief that I'd been given, and I wrote up about it and stuff like that. So it was all really cool. Very basic stuff, but I've still got the folder of work that I did somewhere. It's in the attic somewhere in my keepsakes box. So this folder of my 15-year-old self doing a basic IVR system.
That's awesome. Did it ever make it onto any of your resumes?
Oh, probably my first one. My first out of uni job, and going to the interview for that. Although the interview for that was a bit. I used to talk about it, and when I went for a load of different grad jobs out of university in loads of big companies, and I didn't get any of them. And I talked about 2 kind of really big projects. My dissertation project, which was on mobile development, and then back when before smartphones really existed, and this one. So it's probably on that, but I got none of the grad jobs out of uni, and I ended up in a really small company out of uni, working with a load of other grads on a project that was doomed for failure from the start.
I see. So did you then struggle to kind of, so let me set some context here. So when you joined Amazon, obviously you demonstrated your passion for best practices, right? You have to do that in order to get hired. And I know from working in your team that you did have strong beliefs in that area. How did you then end up learning that you need to do software development right? Because you could have ended up in a team that, and it sounded like you did start with a team that didn't do it very well. But how did you then, was it self-taught? Did you find a team? Did you find mentors? How did you do it?
Yeah. I guess I was quite lucky. So that job that I joined after uni, there was it was a small company, but it was no way in shape or form a startup. They'd been around for a very long time, and they had a very not super strong business, but a good business selling this client server roster management. And the internet was starting to come into the NHS. It was hospitals. There was an influx of money into the NHS in the UK, so hospitals were looking at ways that it could spend it. And this company was trying to make their client server application into a web-based application so that people could use it from anywhere. But the way that they did that was that they hired grads from university to turn this into a web-based application. They hired 2 grads the year before I joined, and then I joined with one other. So there were 4 of us trying to build this web application to do rostering for nurses in hospitals. And because none of us, we'd all straight out of university, none of us had any idea of what it was like to be a software development engineer. We'd all done computer science, but like, you don't learn how to be a software development engineer when you're doing a computer science degree. You learn how to use things like Haskell and do algorithms and other stuff that you might use at some point, but not a lot of the time. Anyway, one of the guys that had joined the year before me had kind of set out a vision of where we wanted to go from a technology standpoint, and then also through ways of working, trying to do things like unit testing, wanting to make sure that we had an understanding of what we were all working on at the same time, and doing kind of very, very basic agile processes that we didn't really know we were doing agile, but it kind of made sense. He'd read quite a lot about clean code, he'd read quite a lot about extreme programming practices and stuff like that. So I was quite lucky that I got to work with him He ended up leaving a year into my time at the company and going to work for Visa. But I took quite a lot out of working with him, and I ended up following him like a lost child throughout my career and going to Visa and working for him again and so on and so forth. And we keep in touch quite a lot now. But I guess that was the start of it. And then I think when I left that original company and then went to work for my next company, I encountered somebody very similar. And he took me under his wing as a junior engineer. We did lots of things like pair programming, test-driven development, loads of other cool extreme programming things, which kind of instilled in me the things around that I now try and put into my teams around software quality, working ways in terms of agile and like doing minimum viable products and all of that kind of stuff. I learned through other people throughout my career. I gain a lot of my knowledge through osmosis, through working with other people who do things in the right way, and I've got quite a good nose for understanding when somebody doesn't know what they're talking about versus he doesn't know what he's talking about, so I need to listen to that and try and understand what it is. So yeah, a lot of my experience throughout my career is attributed to a few key people that I've worked with.
Yeah, that's when people say you need mentors and you need the right mentors, it sounds really cheesy, but I
Mhm.
think for most successful people that is a key factor in their success.
Yeah, definitely is. And I think when you put the label of mentor around it, some people think that it's quite difficult. Like, I've got to go and talk to somebody and ask them to be my mentor. Like, that's really quite scary. But then you realise that you'll have somebody that you know and you work with who is really your mentor, but you don't really have an actual mentor-mentee relationship where you spend like half an hour a month with them talking about how do I get better and stuff like that. You just do it all the time. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely a key thing to do and try and find your person.
Makes sense. Okay, so that's how you started off. At what point did you decide to pivot to being an engineering manager, and what was that key moment? Let me actually tell you why I'm asking this question. So you know that I sometimes have shown this interest in being an engineering manager, but every time I have this thought and every time I consider it seriously, I then get scared that I will be out of the people actually doing things, and then I will be just the one that is providing support, which is great, and I think that support is really important, but I get scared that I will be outside all of the action and I won't be part of like the cool group, if you know what I
Managers,
mean.
managers are cool.
I think my manager is very cool. If my manager is listening to this, please, you're the coolest person. I think managers are really cool, but I have this idea that it might get a bit monotonous and not be as exciting as being a developer on a project. Considering all of that, what were your motivations and what are your motivations to this day?
I guess I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into being a manager first. And so I guess in my second job, so that after this one that I went in after uni, my second job, I was working for ING Direct. And we had a couple of teams out. We started a massive project. We needed more engineering people to help. And so we partnered with a couple of companies out in India to do some consultancy work for us offshore. And part of the deal was that somebody from the development team in the UK would spend time out there to make sure things were going the right way, and to reduce the feedback loop on questions and stuff. So I got the opportunity to spend 2 months out there in Bangalore working directly with these two teams. And during those 2 months, I wasn't doing my day-to-day coding tasks. I was kind of like a mid-level engineer at that point. And instead of doing coding every day, I was spending most of my day kind of answering questions and making sure that the teams were working on the right thing. And I realized that I actually quite enjoyed doing that. Like it was quite nice. There was no pressure in it for me because I was a go-between between them and the manager. So realistically, I had no like authority and I had no real skin in the game, but I was just there to kind of answer questions and then help and go, oh, you should probably look at doing that task before this task because it makes more sense. And I quite enjoyed it. I came back and I was offered the team lead role, like because I'd done quite a good job. And at the time I was in my 20s and I was like, no, I want to be one of the cool kids. I want to keep coding and stuff like that. So I rejected it and I carried on. But I kind of thought like I've always been that kind of leader type person. I was always the captain of the sports teams. I was always the person that volunteered to do the arranging of events for the kind of like extracurricular activities. My friends even called me the designated dad, right? I was always the one that kind of made sure we were all going in the right way when we went out or went away for the weekend and stuff like that. So anyway, I carried on my career. 5 years later, I'm working for the my mentor again. I'm working with him, and he got promoted and took on a lot more responsibility. And he kind of turned to me and went like, Andy, can you pick up all of the crap that I don't have time to do anymore? He didn't phrase it like that, but that was kind of what he said. And so I got the opportunity to do stuff like be the scrum master for the team, do some of the other jobs that I'd been doing in this role in ING again. And then I enjoyed it, and I started to kind of talk to him and say, look, can I take on more of those types of tasks? Can I do a bit more of this? Is there anything else that you don't have time to do that I could do? And I got the opportunity to work as a manager for an apprentice in the team. That was the first time I had a direct report, I guess, and helping them. And I kind of like, God, this is even better, right? I can, not only am I just looking at tasks and things like that, I'm actually having an impact on this person and kind of saying like, you know, if you do this, it's gonna unlock this, right? And I was able to kind of really give back and kind of say like, I remember doing this when I was your age, and what you need to think about is not think about it in terms of this way, but think about it in terms of that way, and you'll grow. And he was really successful as an apprentice, and then I kind of got the opportunity to become a delivery lead rather than the lead engineer, and then I had more people working for me, people at different levels. I had a senior, I had this apprentice, I had a mid-level person, and you kind of, again, it's I guess it's a vocational thing, right? You kind of are born to do it, right? You might be the kind of person that always wants to be hands-on and be doing people, and that is completely fine. There's always going to need to be people like that. Like, it's not, I think maybe 10 years ago or something like that, you'd hit a ceiling as an IC and you'd be not able to kind of go any further. But a lot of companies now are kind of, and at that time the only opportunity that you had to carry on your career was move into management, then go up to senior management, and then blah blah blah. And you might be like, I want to be a hands-on coder, and I can't, right? But a lot of companies now have split those tracks, and they've got, so like at Amazon, you can go principal, senior principal, distinguished, blah blah blah, and other companies do similar things. So I think you don't always have to do it, but then there are people that are very good at it but don't realize that they're very good at it, or in other cases have that imposter syndrome of, someone's telling me that I'm going to be good at this, but I don't think that I will be, and I'm scared, and I need to stay with what I'm comfortable. But I think you just need to listen to the person that's giving you that advice, and take it on board, and know that you'll have the support. And if you are feeling like you can't do it, that means that you actually probably can do it, but you're just nervous that you're not going to be able to do it to the best of your ability. So I think you just need to embrace that, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. I hope
No,
that
no,
answered the
that makes
question. I
sense.
kind of went off on a bit of a ramble there, but yeah, I hope that answered it gave you what you were after.
What I took away was that some people have an interest to be a little bit more hands off, and to do the leading type of work, and supporting the people who are doing the coding rather than doing it themselves. And that is a legit job, and that's a really important job as well. Uh, there's so many things that would go wrong in a team that doesn't have a good manager.
Yeah, I think, and also it's maybe a misconception that you don't do the hands-on
Mm-hmm.
type stuff as a manager. You do, but it's in a different way. So you don't do like I quite openly admit that I can't even remember the last piece of code that I wrote. I think it might have been some kind of config change for a pipeline that we used to do in our old team. But that doesn't mean that I don't know what's happening, and I don't understand it to the level where I can talk to the people in my team and say,
Yeah.
do we really want to do that? Or if the repercussions of us choosing this, making this decision are that we're going to end up with a massive support problem down the line, or we're going to end up with this, or it's we're repeating ourselves here, or we're using the wrong technology stack, or we're using the wrong pattern here to make this, and I can still talk in those terms and I can still understand it, but I just don't do the lower level coding. So I think that there is still an element of that for and anybody who's thinking about becoming a manager and doesn't want to lose their hands-on ability. All you're doing is you're not, in 95% of the time, you're not coding, but you're doing the rest of what you do today.
Interesting. That's an interesting pivot to the next segue to the next question, which is how do you then? So it's nice to have from an IC's perspective. It's amazing to have a manager that understands what I'm doing, because I'm gonna want to talk to them about when I'm foreseeing any problems being blocked, want to convey a certain message to the rest of the team, etc. But I also do not want my manager to come kind of to solve the problems for me. How do you resist don't you feel like going ahead, stepping in and solving the problem for the team?
No.
Okay.
It's I guess like you're kind of talking about micromanaging people
Hmm.
and that side of things. So for me, I kind of look at it and say like the people that end up micromanaging their team are
Hmm.
either people that haven't let go of the fact that they're not doing that work anymore, or they set unrealistic commitments to people that their team's going to deliver it, and they're kind of like, oh my god, my team's not going to deliver for that type, or they just don't trust the people that work for them, right? And I mean, like I said, I've had a lot of different roles over my career, and I've had a lot of different managers. Some of them have been very good, some of them have been really, really bad.
Hmm.
And I like to kind of observe how the managers work and then apply, like, okay, I remember when I was a developer and I liked that the manager would be come to me with and talk to me in this way. So I try and do that myself, right, with my teams. And so I think that it kind of boils down to a few different points, really. I think that you've got to build a trust and respect. So you've got to build a rapport with the engineers that work with you, so that you can trust them and that their work is going to be good, right? So most of them have been through a really rigorous hiring process, so technically they're very good, but you then have to, otherwise they wouldn't be in the job, but you have to be able to trust that they're going to be able to do it in the right way. And then this also works in the other way, so they need to be able to trust me that I have their back, that when stuff's going to go wrong, I'm not going to hang them out to dry with people above or whatever, and I'm going to also protect them from the noise coming down. So that's kind of one point. I think another point, so one of my really bad managers, his only gem of wisdom that I've taken away from that was about delegating in the right way. And he used to talk about kind of an analogy of like you're at a river with the point you need to cross the river, right? And you're the team leader, and you need to kind of get the team to cross the river. So there are different ways that you can tell them. You can just turn around and say, "Hey guys, we need to cross the river," and that's like you're delegating the task to a senior person doing that, and they'd be able to conceptualize, okay, this is how we do it, blah blah blah. But then there's like ramps down to somebody who's straight out of university, and you're going, we need to cross the river. I've already got you all of the tools, I've already got you all of the materials. Here's a plan of how to do it. I think that we should do it in these steps, and I'm going to come back to you in about tomorrow to see how far we've got, right? So there's loads of different ways. If you need to understand your team and the people that you're working with to be able to talk to them at the right level, so that I know that if I'm talking to you because of this, because you like to know the why of why we're doing things, and somebody else might just be like, oh, I don't care, whatever, just give me a task and I'll do it. And I'm delegating it in the right way that then I don't need to micromanage because I'm only really managing at the level that you need. So that's kind of the second bit. And then I think, like I just mentioned there, that you like to know the reason why we're doing stuff. There might be other people that have other strengths, right? But then everybody has their kind of improvement area that they need to do in order to get better. So I need to make sure that I'm building on their strengths, but then also coaching their improvements. So I'm not kind of asking somebody to do something that they're really weak in a big setting that when if they're not going to succeed because they need to improve in that area, the failure is going to be a really big one and they're not going to trust me. So I need to in the background coach them on these things and build them up so that they're able to then be in the future take on a different level of delegation. They might not know that I'm coaching them in that way, but I am in the background and I'm understanding like their again, this kind of goes back to the building the rapport. I understand where they are, what they've been doing, where their strengths, and we give them the right tasks that excite them and stretch them, but don't stretch them too far to the point that they break. And then I guess the last bit would be, like you mentioned early on, is being clear on what I expect. So I think this is something that I've learned in the last, since I joined Amazon really. I think at the start of my journey at Amazon, I was not very clear to my teams that this is how I wanted things to work. I just expected people to work in the same way as me. And I've grown over the last 6 years or so to be very clear that I expect like very open and honest communication because I'm an open and honest communicator. I expect that when you tell me you're going to do something by a certain time or a certain date, that you're going to try your hardest to get to that point and try and hit that, right? And you're not going to tell me something that's been completely realistic. And then I'm going to expect that you're treating the other people in the team with the same level of respect, right? And also that's kind of like on a human level, but then on a technical level, I'm going to expect that you've followed the standards and the policies that we've set out, you've followed the processes that we follow as a team, and all of that kind of stuff, so that you are a very effective engineer within the team, and that I can trust that you're gonna do it. And then that means that I don't need to be as involved in the day to day. I can take a step back and I can make sure that you succeed in what you do, because at the end of the day, I take the approach that I'm leading a team to get to the point of where they're able to do everything that they need to do without me being there, and I'm redundant. If I'm micromanaging everything, I'm not going to get to that point at all.
Yeah, sounds like a rules of engagement
Okay.
for Andy,
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
or an API contract. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that senior ICs can also take away a lot of actions from this because I think every senior IC also has a certain style of working, and there is delegation involved, and they could be micromanaging as well. So this stuff is important for them to kind of make note of as well.
Definitely.
Cool. Okay, so I just also want to kind of take the opportunity to tell our listeners that we used to have this internal, I forget what it's called, but some sort of internal rating system for managers where we rate our managers I think every week or every 2 weeks, something like that,
I think it was once a month, maybe, yeah.
once a month, and scores would come out, and it sounds really intimidating at this point if you think about it as a manager, but just wanted to say that Andy used to come out with really high scores. I don't think, yeah, we had other managers and it didn't quite turn out that way. Anyway, so moving on. Let's talk about remote work. I know
Mm,
that this is a topic you used to be interested in way before the pandemic. And then
yeah.
the pandemic happened, remote work became very mainstream. And then it started becoming a very controversial topic. And now there's hybrid, and there's companies that say that remote work is not very effective. There are some companies that say that it's the best thing ever. It's so confusing out there. And it's interesting from a manager's perspective. And we just talked about micromanaging and trust, etc. What is your take on remote work now as a manager? And what is your advice to engineers and managers and companies on this topic?
Okay. I guess I am a big fan of remote work, and I think I'm especially at the right time, I guess. Now, I think I'm a relatively introverted person, so I don't need the day-to-day person interaction with people. I'm quite happy to have conversations on whatever it is, Zoom, Slack, whatever, rather than having to be in the office with them. And I think part of that is the fact that I'm quite open with people and I like other people who are quite open with me. So I feel like I can talk enough with people without needing to be there face to face to kind of understand what happens. But then having said that, I think that there are times where remote work doesn't work as well as in-person work,
Okay.
especially when you're building a new team or you're starting a new job. I think that it's difficult to kind of kind of instill the right culture in your team if you're all remote, because people don't necessarily, it's a lot easier for you to not be an active participant in a meeting if you're on mute, or if you've got your camera turned off or stuff like that. And I think that also when we're all remote, it might be harder for me as a manager to understand kind of how the team is in terms of their actual day-to-day emotions and feelings, right? So I might not know that after our stand-up, that is maybe the only time that I'm going to see you today, that you're actually feeling really down and need somebody to just kind of ask how you are and get you to it. I've seen you virtually for 15 minutes and I've not seen the fact that you're completely fed up with your day-to-day or what you're doing today. So there are elements of it where it is good to be remote, but then also good to be face to face. I think, like I said, starting a new job, I think I've recently changed roles. I've been in my new job for about just over a month now, and I've really enjoyed going back into the office 3 days a week because I've been able to talk to everybody and meet people and find out how the team's working and all of this kind of stuff. And I've just come back from a week-long offsite where all I did is I talked to people and I met face to face with nearly everybody that I'm going to spend the rest of my time working here with. So that would have been really difficult to do remotely. So I guess if we'd have had this conversation maybe a year ago, I'd have been like, why the hell would we ever want to come back into the office? I'm quite happy being remote and I'm quite happy being down by the beach and living in my nice house, and I don't need to go on a train and get to work and yeah, and what would be the point? But then I guess my circumstances changing in terms of my job. I understand it a bit more now, and I understand that being in person, you get that kind of touchy-feely understanding not touchy-feely, that sounds a bit wrong, but the non-verbal communication, the overhearing conversations that are happening, and that gives you a bit more context. So I think my advice to people and to companies would be to kind of, well, I guess I would say that a hybrid system works. Dictating that you must be in the office for X number of days a week is a bit nonsensical. I think that you should trust the people in your team to do the right thing and work in the office the right number of days for them, rather than saying you must be in the office 3 days a week, because it might be that one of those days out of the three I'm not doing anything that I couldn't do when I'm at home. And then I guess I am not a one for pushing for doing overtime and long hours and things like that, because I feel like you've got something wrong if you're having to work that long be it either you've overcommitted to something, or you don't understand what you're doing, or you're being pushed to do something unrealistic by your manager. So I would say that trusting the people to do the work in the time that suits them, as long as they get the work done, doesn't really matter whether or not they work remotely, or they work in the office, or they start their day at 10 in the morning, or 7:30 in the morning, or finish their day at whatever. I think it should be a lot more flexible than it probably currently is.
Yeah, I think I agree 100% with everything you just said. And if it wasn't for remote work or hybrid work, I have no idea how I would have continued working in any kind of job this year. Just for our listeners here, I have a new baby, and she's gonna be one really soon. But this baby did not want to survive without me. She couldn't have survived without me being in the house. And I went back to work when she was 6 months old, and I'm really, really grateful to my employer, Microsoft currently, that they were so cool with me from working from home, onboarding from home, and it's just been unbelievable how much I have learned over the 6 months, because I don't think this was my first experience onboarding remotely, and I don't think that I would have believed that I could have learned as much as I did over the last 6 months. And this is just a testament to the company being so open and supportive of working remotely and providing the support that I needed to get the resources for me to learn while working from home. So for me, it's made a difference of not working and actually working and at a job that is a stretch for me, because this is a job that I got at a higher level than that I was working at before. Okay, cool. So actually, that is another interesting point I wanted to touch upon. You did something similar very recently. So you have this cool new job, and it sounds like you got a promotion through a job change. So the first challenge that at least I personally faced while trying to do something like that was to convince the recruiters who are reaching out to you that you're actually capable of, or actually even are and have been performing at that level for a while, because you don't have it on paper. And recruiters might not want to waste their time on you. They might not want to give you the interviews that give you the opportunity to prove yourself, to prove that you can work at that level. I have had experiences where they said that they would level me using the interview process, but they didn't ask me any questions that would actually level me. So I was given a bunch of coding exercises, great, but then I was given an offer for the same level that I was working on, and I was like, hey, but you didn't ask me any questions. I could have coded like this 4 years ago. It doesn't matter. You didn't ask me anything about system design. You didn't ask me any behavioral questions. So how did you decide what my level was? They said that they did that based on my resume, but I thought that wasn't fair, and I wasn't given the right, opportunity to prove myself. When I interviewed with Microsoft, I had a conversation with a recruiter from Microsoft, and it's funny because I had almost given up at that point, and she said, "Okay, we have some openings at senior and principal software engineer level," and she said, "So would you like to apply?" And I said, "Okay, tell me about the senior engineer role," because I had completely given up, and she told me about it, and then I looked kind of disappointed. And then she said, "Okay, you tell me, what is it that you want and what is it that you do in your day-to-day job?" And I told her that for the last X amount of years, this is what I've been doing. And then she was the one who told me that, "I think you should be interviewing at principal level. Let's give you this interview, and if we find that you aren't quite there, we will make you an offer for senior, but this will give you the opportunity to at least prove that you're functioning at principal level," and the rest is history, as they say. What was your experience with this?
That sounds really cool, actually, that you had a recruiter that was able to kind of think about it and look at it in that way, because that doesn't often happen. I don't feel like you do. For me, so I went through quite a few different roles and job applications at different levels. One of the criteria I was looking for when I moved was that I would get a bit more responsibility than I'd had. I'd been at Amazon for 6 years doing the same level, so I'd kind of thought, right, I'd like to try and move up as well as into a new role. And I'd been through a few applications or initial phone screens with companies that I'd applied for at the same level as I am now, and they'd done very similar and gone, well, we need somebody who's got more experience at this level, or had experience of leading multiple teams or something like that. I guess the job that I got, I had a very similar experience to you, I guess, but rather than it being with the recruiter, I had it with the hiring manager. So the first phone screen that I had with my now manager was a very casual conversation about what I've done in my previous jobs, not just my most recent one, but throughout my career in terms of management jobs. And he wanted to understand what kind of responsibility I'd had, not just how many people I'd managed, right, or how many teams I'd managed. What other things have I done? So where had I looked at instilling new ways of working? Where had I worked at influencing people outside of my direct report chain? Or where had I run multiple projects at once and stuff like that? So it was quite good in a way that he didn't look at my CV just as a piece of paper and go, well, nowhere does it say that he's managed multiple teams. And I think also I was quite lucky that the role that I've applied for, they had a number of open roles. So I think they've done a similar thing, or without telling me, they were doing a similar thing, that they were trying to gauge my experience to try and understand what I wanted to get at and what I had been doing. And then if I didn't quite reach what they needed for the role I'd applied, they'd have down-leveled me and offered me to interview at the level below. So that was kind of a similar thing for me.
Interesting. So I think it continues to be a hard problem for people to solve. Promotions are tricky, and this kind of promotion via job hopping is tricky as well. It's just I will continue to kind of talk to people and try to maybe find some patterns to see how they can be applied in different situations. But I guess there's no easy answer here.
No, and I would say as a hiring manager, you would want somebody to put themselves across really well on their CV. So don't. I mean, we could spend ages talking about this, and I don't really want to, but there are so many CVs that I've seen of mid-level or senior level engineers who their CV goes on for far too long, and they talk about everything that they've ever worked on and every tool that they're proficient in and every language that they've ever written a piece of code in, and it's like, I don't care. I really don't care about that kind of stuff. I want to know, like, in your last 3 roles, what were you working on and what impact did you have, rather than it being a case of I've worked at this company and I've used this technology and I've done this. It's like, this is whatever. I've seen so many CVs for so many people that are very similar, and how do I? So I guess making yourself stand out in your CV is the first bit. And I guess after that, you're probably going to get some form of a first phone screen, either with a manager or a recruiter. And at that point, you've got to kind of tailor your responses to the job requisition or the job ID, the job spec, and make it so that you probably don't try and fake it or like make up stuff, but you probably, if you're able to apply for this job, you probably have some kind of experience doing at least one part of it, and you can kind of, even if it's not exactly the right experience that they're after, you can shape your answer to show that you are at least willing to learn it, or you have some level of you might not have all of the minimum criteria for the job, but you might have 3 out of the 5, and if you can kind of make sure that you get that across, then you're going to get through to the next round. And I think you're getting past that first level sift on the CVs is hard, and then getting past the first round of phone screen is also hard. But then once you're past that, as long as you interview well, you're probably going to get a, at least an offer. I would have thought, because a lot of companies put a lot of emphasis on that first round of sift and the first round of phone screen to get rid of the not so great candidates.
Right. Yeah, and that's where the people who don't have who might have done great work but don't have a great CV, they just get filtered out. They don't get an opportunity to show what they're capable of.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good advice. So I guess we're coming to the end of this. Maybe one last thing that I'm personally interested in. What is you think the difference? I know it's quite early days and you're new to this role, but based on your experience so far, what do you think is the difference between managing one team and then being a part of senior management, getting to make important decisions for the org, etc.?
Yeah, you're right. It's quite new, but I guess if I'm thinking about it more generic rather than just kind of like what I do day to day, because I still don't really understand that. But I guess there's a few things. It's like being able to have technical oversight over a bigger domain. So I guess, like I was saying way back at the start, I still understand what the team are doing, and I don't necessarily do the coding. That still applies, but the domain's bigger, so I don't go as deep maybe into everything, but I understand it at the right technical level and how all of those services or products interact and where the failure points could be. Why have people not thought about how we would maintain this long term and so on and so forth? I'm still doing that, but across a bigger estate. I guess being able to run multiple projects at the same time. And I think, again, it's not to the same depth as it was, but it's knowing that the people that I manage, the leaders of teams that I manage, have thought about it to the same level as I would have done if I was in their shoes. But I think the biggest changes have been around setting vision for the team on areas such as delivery, software excellence, standards, that kind of thing, and kind of instilling that in my world, whereas I would have done that previously for single team. I'm now kind of working across multiple teams and looking at that, and it's a much more important thing to try and get that into the managers that I manage, into their head, so that then they understand it and they can start to build that same culture down into their team. And I think also looking to put people in touch. I think there's a lot more of networking in my current role than there was in my previous roles, so that I know that we're working on something to do with Kubernetes at the moment, and there's another team that sit just down the floor that also work in Kubernetes, so we could work more closely with them, or we might have a problem that they've already solved, or vice versa. So I can put people in touch with other people that I know are working in similar areas, so that we can not do the same thing multiple times across the business. And then I guess the last thing would be knowing I still need to know what's happening day to day in my teams, but I don't want to be involved in it. So that might sound like a bit of a weird way of saying it, but I guess like I still go to the odd stand up here and there just to kind of make sure that I understand what's happening. I trust that the teams below me are going to deliver on that, so I don't need to get involved in it. I might be there to, if I'm in a stand up and somebody says, oh, we've not been able to get in touch with this person, and that's slowing us down, then I can go and talk to them and be like, hey, how can we improve this? How can we make our communications across the teams better? You might be in a different time zone, or you might be in a different org. How do we network again, really, to understand it? And so I need to be involved to the point of understanding, but not in the execution side of things.
That sounds interesting. That sounds really tempting. Oh, I'm gonna be so confused. Anyway, okay.
You'll make the
So,
right decision eventually, Bhavna. I know you will, don't worry.
well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Right. So I'm gonna end this with a fun challenge for you. You've been a manager for quite a while. You've been involved in promoting people from your own teams, and now you're going to be involved in possibly approving promotions from teams under you. Now, my challenge to you is maybe 3 pieces of actionable advice for engineers who are stuck in a mid-level to grow into senior engineer.
3 pieces of advice. Okay. Understand the process. So everywhere has different processes for promotions. Like you want to understand exactly how it works in your company or your organization. Who reviews it? What artifacts you need? Do you need feedback from others? Because all of that's going to be not your manager's not going to necessarily be able to do all of it. He or she might need help. Or it might be on you to drive that, right? Depending on where you're working. So that would be point one. And then I'd say level set with your manager. So sit there and have a really open and honest conversation of where you are in the journey. What do you need to do to get to the next level? The feedback that you get from your manager might not be what you want to hear, and you might think that you're a lot closer than you potentially are. But if you're having an open and honest discussion about it, you shouldn't be upset when they tell you that you're not as close as you think you are, and you should take the feedback in the right way. And then the third one I'll pick then, that you should look for opportunities to show next level work and next level scope that are not in your day-to-day work. Your manager might have a team of 6 and people at your level. 2 of them or 3 of them may be on the promotion path as well. That manager may struggle to kind of feed you all enough next level work, and you may end up having to work on a project the way you're not leading it. That doesn't mean that your promotion case is now stuck. You can look for other things outside of your team to do. So look out for discussions that are happening in the office from other teams that you can then add value to. Look for mentors, people that you can mentor, junior engineers. Look at your team itself and the way it works and say, okay, this bit doesn't work very well, this process isn't great, how do I change this, or what do we automate here? It's not just projects that are going to get you promoted. You need to be able to show the other elements of being a senior engineer, and you can do that at any time. You don't need your manager to give you the work to do it.
Is a great way of ending this. Thank you so much, Andy, for your time today, and speak to you sometime soon, hopefully.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that this wasn't as good as Adam. He did say that his was the pinnacle, and he started with the best, and yeah, you're probably right.
Did he say that on air?
He did. That's how it finished. I'm sorry you started with the best. I can do nothing but agree with that.
Right. Okay. I don't think I can say anything smarter than that to top it. I think I did peak there in my first episode. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Andy, and
No worries.
chat soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.